This is the new OnePlus 6, and it's seriously impressive. It has the same flagship specs as the Samsung Galaxy S9, yet it costs a third less. It's just £469 or $520 for the base model, which considering what you get, makes it incredible value for money. Seriously, this is the fastest phone I've ever used. It's stunning to look at, and I think most surprisingly, because I don't think I've ever said this about a OnePlus phone before, but the camera is very, very good. Like, as good as the most expensive phones out there that can cost up to twice as much. So yeah, this is pretty exciting. So the OnePlus 6 sports a tall 6.3-inch AMOLED screen with super thin bezels, and as is the trend it seems, a notch. They've swapped out the metal body of previous phones for Gorilla Glass 5 on the front and the back. Picking it up, you definitely get the sense this is a premium phone, but it's also quite slippery to hold, so I would definitely put a case on it. Now I've got it in mirror black, which looks great for about 10 seconds after you first get it out of the box, but it's a massive fingerprint and dust and smudge magnet, so unless you're carrying a dust cloth with you or putting a case on it, I think I'd probably go for the midnight black model, which is still Gorilla Glass, but it has a matte texture, or the beautiful silk white version of the OnePlus 6, which is coming out just after launch and is a bit more of a limited edition model. The most obvious change, aside from the thinner bezels and the notch, is the new vertical camera placement on the back and the redesigned fingerprint reader below it, which I think overall makes it look a lot like the Porsche designed Huawei Mate RS, which is a £1,500 phone. Holding it though, it feels pretty much just like last year's OnePlus 5T, albeit with even slimmer bezels. There's a few little extras I really like about the OnePlus 6 as well. You've got the alert slider on the right hand side, so you can quickly go from ring to vibrate to silent mode. Really easy if you're going to bed and you just want to put it in silent mode. You've also got a headphone jack, even though OnePlus are also launching a pair of wireless bullet headphones and teased that the OnePlus 6 may not therefore have a headphone jack. We do have one, which is great to see. And also it's a dual SIM phone, which is really handy as I travel quite a lot. It's the little touches too, like having a screen protector already on the phone, and you get a case bundle with it in the box. Specs-wise, it runs the latest Snapdragon 845 processor and comes with 6 or 8 gigs of RAM and 64, 128 or 256 gigabytes of storage. I've got the one with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 storage, but honestly, I think you'd be absolutely fine going with the cheapest one, which still has the same specs as the Galaxy S9. So I think it's a great looking phone, but it's not until you start using it that you really start appreciating what makes the OnePlus 6 so special. As I say, this is the fastest phone I've ever used. It's the combination of the latest hardware, but also the super lightweight Oxygen OS software on top of Android 8.1. This thing just breezes through everything. It's fast, it's reliable, and of course handles even the most graphically intensive games without a hitch. And in the settings, you can do things like hide the notch if you prefer. You can adjust the screen's color profile with sRGB and DCI-P3 options. But I think my favorite software trick is using gestures instead of the standard Android nav buttons. A swipe up from the bottom takes you home, hold it to bring up recently used apps, or swipe up from the left or right side of the bottom to go back. It feels a lot like the iPhone X or the upcoming gestures in Android P. It's really intuitive, I use it all the time, and it means you do get some extra space back on the screen now that you've hidden the Android keys. When it comes to unlocking the phone, I've registered both my fingerprint and my face, but usually what I do is just double tap the screen and it unlocks almost instantly, well, in 0.4 seconds to be exact, using the front camera's face unlock feature, so I pretty much never see the lock screen. So far, so good then, but of course no phone is perfect. The OnePlus 6 does have a couple of flaws, and it misses out on some more premium features compared to its more expensive rivals. For example, the screen doesn't support high dynamic range, so no HDR Netflix movies, I'm afraid. The speaker is, well, pretty bad if I'm honest. It's tinny, there's obviously no stereo sound since it's a single speaker, and it's probably one of the worst I've heard in a while, which is a bit of a shame. There's also no wireless charging, although personally that's not really a big deal, and it's also missing an official IP rating for water resistance, which is a bit weird, but having tested it myself, it did survive a quick dunk in a bowl of water, and OnePlus do assure me it's still fairly water and dust resistant, but you probably shouldn't go swimming with it. Another area where I'm not exactly blown away by the OnePlus 6 is the battery life. It's the same size battery as the one in the OnePlus 5 and the 5T, but they say it should last 10% longer thanks to the more efficient processor, and that's despite offering a bigger screen. In practice though, it only just lasts me through a full day if I'm honest. I usually have around 15 to 20% of the battery left by about 11 o'clock at night, and with heavier use, I found I did need to give it a quick top up before I went out in the evening. Coming from the P20 Pro, it's a little disappointing, but I'd say it's about on par with the Galaxy S9. Although the good news is it supports super fast charging. You'll get around 75% of your battery from flat in about 30 minutes. It's really useful. But there's one area where I've always felt OnePlus phones have kind of fallen behind their more expensive flagship rivals, and that's in the camera department. They've always been good, but not great. That is, until now. We get two lenses, a 16 megapixel f1.7 main lens, which now has a 19% larger sensor than last year's 5T, along with a 20 megapixel f1.7 telephoto lens for 2x optical zoom and providing depth information for the portrait mode. The main lens also now supports both OIS and EIS for more stable shots, particularly in low light and of course when shooting video. Photos look stunning, both in good light and crucially in darker low light settings, where OnePlus phones have traditionally fallen behind rivals. Honestly, I was not expecting the camera on the OnePlus 6 to be this good. Versus the Galaxy S9 Plus, it's almost impossible to tell them apart, even in really tricky lighting conditions. And that's with the S9 using its fancy f1.5 variable aperture camera. Photos from the OnePlus 6 are bright, detailed, and color accurate. My only criticism would be the camera app itself, which is fairly basic and lacks the variety of modes you'd find on, say, the P20 Pro. The 16 megapixel f2 selfie camera is impressive as well. It doesn't suffer from the overly smooth beauty modes that are almost impossible to turn off on the P20 Pro, and takes a great selfie. Shame about the face though. Portrait mode is good too, although the bokeh effect can sometimes come out a bit too strong for me. But overall it works well and you can really make your subject stand out. As for video, you can now shoot 4K at 60 frames per second on the OnePlus 6, something even the P20 Pro can't do, although you do lose the stabilization you get shooting at 4K 30, although that's the same for all phones that can do this. Even walking down the street, it's impressively smooth, although you do get a slightly artificial look to the movements, thanks to the electronic image stabilization. But overall, video looks great, and the OIS and EIS make it ridiculously smooth, almost like it's on a gimbal. And of course we also have slow motion video. It is limited to 240 FPS at Full HD on the OnePlus 6, whereas other phones like the S9, Sony XZ2 and P20 Pro can shoot super slow-mo at 960 FPS, but to be brutally honest, I think super slow motion is mostly pretty rubbish. Even in the best light, the quality is fairly ropey and it can be really difficult to actually capture what you want in slow motion, especially when it's only taking 0.2 seconds of video each time. For me, being able to capture a full minute of slow-mo at 240 FPS on the OnePlus 6 is exactly what I want. Quality is actually pretty decent, and that works out to give you 6 minutes of real-time playback, so you're never going to miss the thing you want to capture. So all of that for £470. Now I know most people buy their phones on contract, so the difference between this and, say, the S9 Plus, maybe £10 or £15 a month. But save your money. It's a decent upgrade over the 5T with a new processor, refreshed design and upgraded camera that's now just every bit as good as the most expensive phones out there. The speaker's a bit rubbish, the phone doesn't support HDR, and coming from the P20 Pro, the battery life is average at best. But that's about it. That's pretty much all I can criticize the OnePlus 6 for. And considering that this is nearly £300 more than this, well, it's just incredible value for money. So if you are looking for a new phone, I would definitely recommend checking out the OnePlus 6. And I've put links to it in the description below if you want to find out more. Make sure you do subscribe, as I'll be making more in-depth battery and camera videos about the OnePlus 6 very soon. And of course, let me know what you think of it in the comments. Is it a decent upgrade, and would you consider buying one? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.